From HanselMinutes.com, it's Hansel Minutes, a weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 302, recorded live Wednesday, January 11th, 2012. Support for Hansel Minutes is provided by Telerik RAD Controls, the most comprehensive suite of components for Windows Forms and ASP.NET web applications. Online at www.telerik.com. In this episode, Scott talks with Jon Skeet.
So I'm here with Jon Skeet. You work at Google.
Yes, I do. Which is a fabulous place to work, but I don't speak on behalf of them. So this is pretty much all we'll say about Google, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a brilliant place to work.
But you made it through the interview process.
Yes. And we do have a difficult interview process because we want the best of the best, as I'm sure Microsoft does as well. And every one of my colleagues, including myself, we all feel we are the one person to get through this. I won't say a nasty interview process. It's a lot of fun. Even if you don't get through, it's a lot of fun. But it's tricky. And we all feel that we managed to squeak through and fool our friends, now friends and our interviewers at the time, into thinking that we had some special powers, that we don't feel that we've got ourselves.
So sincerely, without false humility, you and your peers at the big multinational company who dare not speak its name honestly think that, like, you could be found out. Yeah.
I think by now, so I've been there nearly 4 years, and I sort of think I can now fit in properly, so that I know how I can make my way and contribute. But equally, I can look at all my peers and think, wow, you guys are smart. And everyone there is smart in some different way. And they're all really, really nice guys as well. I think, how did I get here, basically?
Are there people who are there that you don't know why they're still there? Like, how did this guy make it through the process? If I made it through the process, how did this guy make it through the process?
Let's say I can't think of anyone offhand.
So you honestly stack rank yourself, like, on the left side of the bell curve?
Within my colleagues?
Amongst your colleagues?
Yeah.
So lower average?
Yeah, I think so. And certainly there are certainly people who achieve much more while they're there. I regard myself as having a fairly healthy work-life balance. So I don't push myself. I work hard for the company, but I don't kill myself for the company. And there are some people who will just achieve monumental things. And you see what they're doing in their normal day-to-day job, and you think, and then you're managing to do other things outside the normal projects. How do you find the time? It's crazy.
And is it based just entirely on they're working harder than you are? Or are they working more hours?
It's finding the right things to work on and finding the right people to work with and being smarter. I'm absolutely sure of it. I'm not saying that I'm sort of the least smart person there, but I'm far, far from the smartest by miles.
So let's set a little context and explain to people who might not know who you are. Because we were at dinner yesterday, and I switched tables at the end of the dinner to talk to some friends. And then you were leaving, and I said, "Hey, it's Jon Skeet. Oh my God, it's Jon Skeet." And I waved, and you waved, and then you left, and the guys at the table, the four that I was sitting with that you saw, said, "Who's that?" Right. And I just said, it's Jon Skeet. He's got his own search engine. I mean, he's got, like, he's the number one guy on Stack Overflow. And I told him some of the Jon Skeet questions in the style of Chuck Norris that have helped to build the legend. And you know what they said? They said, "Wow, he seems like a really nice guy."
Oh, that's very kind.
That's honestly what they said. They said, "Oh, I really," and then the discussion turned into, "I really like it when amazing people that are super smart are very, very nice."
Right.
And then I said, "I don't know if he thinks he's that smart. We'll have to ask him."
Well, so it is the amazing people who are super smart that just gets me. No, it's all an impression. And I think we were saying this yesterday, that if you can explain things, even relatively simple things, if you can cotton onto ideas and persuade people of them in maybe a different style, just some way that they haven't heard before, then people will think you're much smarter than you really are. So I feel like I'm constantly bluffing on Stack Overflow. It's not that I think my answers are wrong. They're fine. I'm proud of what I do on Stack Overflow. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think it's actually a measure of smartness. I think it's a measure of being able to find the resources. So I'm good at using search engines. I'm good at finding things in the C# spec. And I've read the C# spec. There's nothing, you don't have to be a genius to read a specification. I know the spec better than some other people, but anyone can look things up and I can somehow explain things a bit better. And that's really all there is to it. And that's not a cause of genius or anything. It's useful. It's really handy as a skill. And I don't know where I particularly got it from. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I would rate it as highly as many other people who have a real gift for just putting, do you know, when someone explains something, you think that is so clear. It's like a crystal clarity that no one's ever achieved on that topic in my hearing before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that will happen sometimes. I'm not nearly there,
mm-hmm.
but I'm just above where many other people are. And I think actually that in itself is a line where people use the term expert pretty readily these days. So if you say to someone, what's in a .NET string? And they say, well, it's a sequence of UTF-16 code units. Then that's actually correct. And suddenly they sound like you're an expert on Unicode. Wow. No, I may know a little bit more than someone else. And that's all it takes. If you can see that someone knows more than you, it's very hard to work out how much more they know than you, because you don't know what you don't know, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. It's like Donald Rumsfeld's unknown unknowns. I think his quote was unfortunately bashed he said something that did actually make sense there. So if you can't really tell how much more someone knows than you do, it's mm-hmm. very easy to just jump to the assumption that they know huge amounts and
right.
They're a genius. No, they know something more than you.
My wife is going back to school, which is funny because she has an MBA, but she wants mm-hmm. to go back to school and become a nurse. So she is brushing up on some math. Right. So we go up to the Khan Academy and we do the Algebra 2 kind mm-hmm. of mid-level, graphs and stuff. And they started busting out a couple of things like, 2 to the square root of something. And then you have to figure out you have to remember, like, what do you do with the 2?
Right.
Is it like, do you times it or do you put it up
there?
Yeah. All those little rules about like, log this and that the exponent goes there. And it was all just, moving numbers around. And in my mind, I remember that there was a thing where 2 to something, and I just could not pull it out.
No.
But I talk to people at work, just in everyday discussions, and something like that will come up. And there are people my age, and they just seem to have that stuff.
Just ready to, yeah.
Right there. And I then silently feel stupid. I think to myself, because I don't remember the quadratic equation.
Right.
I just don't. I know it's like 2 plus or minus something as a square root and then over 4ac. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Do you know it?
B squared plus or minus 4ac over, no, I can't.
Over 2a?
I can't remember.
You and I are idiots.
Yeah. And I've got a maths degree.
See, that's even worse. But see, then that just makes me feel like I should have gone to MIT. I visited. I didn't feel comfortable. I went to a community college instead. I wasn't emotionally ready to go to MIT. Whereas
one of the smartest guys I work with, or that I generally have breakfast with, he feels, how did he squeak by? Because he doesn't have a degree. At all.
Oh.
At all. I think. Forgive me, Greg, if that's wrong. But he blows me away. He will be talking about any topic, pretty much, that he's willing to talk about. He will have considered opinions, ones that I may disagree with or not, but he will have considered opinions and reasons behind them. Mm-hmm. And he's just one of those people that you just suck up their energy mm-hmm. that just comes all the time.
Yeah.
And he's so smart the whole time.
Someone told me a story. I don't know. It's always fun to have like, mythological stories of people who aren't here. But, everyone knows that Scott Goo knows a lot about .NET
everything.
And the web and everything. Someone said that they were in like England or somewhere with Scott Goo in a casual after the conference kind of
mm-hmm.
an affair. and they were standing in front of like a castle or some old pile of rocks, and he just started reciting like chapter and verse about what happened in like 1615 in this spot in like this random place, And again, I don't know if this is exactly true or whatever, but they were like, "How do you know that?" It's like, "Oh, it's that's 16th century English history is one of my hobbies or whatever." I almost did my PhD dissertation in it or something like that. And you just go, "Wow, really?" And you're well-rounded. And then you find out, of course, that they're on a rowing team.
Yep.
And they're not only smart and funny and, but,
and you'd absolutely hate them.
Oh, they're awful.
If they weren't so incredibly nice as well.
Oh, it's the worst.
There is no way anyone could hate Scott Goot.
No, he's so darn nice.
It would be impossible.
But he doesn't seem to have any sense of imposter theory and imposter. What is this? That sense like
phonyism.
Phony. Yeah. Einstein had imposter syndrome. He thought he wasn't smart enough because all his life he was told he wasn't smart enough.
Right.
Does that drive us forward though? I mean, do we all have this secret shame?
I think it depends on how you treat it. So some people will be driven by feeling themselves not smart enough. So I will be driven to find out more about everything and improve myself. And other people, it'll crush them. So I think it should be something that you do to yourself if it's useful rather than other people doing it to you. But I think it's healthy to have a healthy disrespect for yourself.
I like a healthy disrespect for yourself. Someone told me though that having an overdeveloped sense of an imposter syndrome, a sense of you are a phony, can be a sign of depression.
Possibly. I don't know anything about psychology and things. I'm not depressed. I thoroughly enjoy my life.
Yeah.
I go through it with people coming up to me and say, "Wow, love what you're doing on whatever. You're amazing." I'm thinking, I'm not, but it's so nice of you to say so. How could I be depressed when, I feel a phony, but equally it means everyone's really nice to me.
Yeah. The one that I get a lot is, how do you get so much done?
Right.
I'm just doing stuff. Like, what are you doing? One really nice guy came up to me and he said, "I'm a single guy. I have no kids. I have no hobbies. And I'm barely able to get the stuff done that I want to get done." I was like, "How do you get done and you've got kids?" And it's like, I don't know, man. I mean, what are you doing all the time? Let's break it down hour by hour. What are you doing?
Yes, absolutely. And I feel I don't get stuff done. So I'm looking at, I've got my Node Time project, open source project for new date and time API that has been sitting not in a V1 for over 2 years now.
Yeah.
So, I'm not getting it done. There's 2 books on C# I want to be writing at the moment, but I haven't found the time to actually get round to it yet. There's another book that I'm meant to be editing and I keep not finding the time. So they see that I'm always answering Stack Overflow questions, which stops me from getting other stuff done, of course. And that's just, I'm a terrible procrastinator. If I don't have to do something right now, I probably will leave it until tomorrow. So I don't get nearly as much stuff done as some people seem to think. And I'm sure if each person took a look at what they were actually getting done, there wouldn't be this huge gap that people seem to imagine.
Someone said that like half of success is just showing up.
Absolutely.
And I think that like the reason that some people are like, "Oh, I love your podcast," and I feel okay about the podcast. I think we've caught our stride.
Right.
There's a couple of shows that don't go quite the way I want, whether it be I didn't research the topic enough or the audio quality isn't good enough. But for the most part, it's okay. But honestly, the reason I think the show does okay is because it's consistent.
Right.
And I've been doing 300 shows every day. I haven't missed a week in 5 years.
And that's awesome for everyone else who's trying to blog or whatever, seeing that kind of consistency. So
but it could be consistently bad though. It's just consistent though.
But if it were consistently bad, you would improve.
True. Yeah,
and the fact that you can see now, well, there are some shows that maybe I didn't do enough research or the audio quality. You can see things that you can improve. So over time, even if you don't know how you're improving things, those will improve. So I'll give you an example. In my first sort of 6 months of working at Google, I wasn't very good at making cappuccino. I couldn't froth the milk well. So I nearly set it as one of my OKRs, objectives and key results, that I would learn how to froth milk properly. And I didn't actually do that, but I gradually got better, and I couldn't even pinpoint how I got better. And more significantly, I'm not sure that I could really teach someone else now how to do milk frothing, But now I can do a pretty good cappuccino. Yeah. If someone comes to London, come visit me, I will make you a cappuccino. You will not complain. It's good. But I had to drink many, many cups of coffee. It was so hard just showing up and having another cup of coffee. I would get in the morning. Oh, all right. I'll have another coffee. I will eventually get at the milk frothing. Yeah. Okay. I love coffee. But it is that consistency of keeping trying it again and again makes such a difference.
You kept showing up.
I did. Without knowing, assuming I would improve without knowing what I would be doing to improve.
Mm-hmm. So there's conscious, focused, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to learn to do this. I'm going to improve this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's simply the showing up.
Yeah.
Like with Stack Overflow, you that's something you do every day. You brush your teeth, you do your Stack Overflow.
Pretty much. Usually the other order.
Okay. But what if you didn't do it for a week or 2 weeks? Have you ever fallen off the wagon?
So I have occasionally not done it if I'm on holiday. Sometimes I will post, sometimes I won't. So I went to Florence last year and the hotel room had Wi-Fi connection, and a laptop in the hotel room. So yes, sometimes when, if Holly was having a nap or whatever, I would go on Stack Overflow, but I've never felt like, right, I'm going to take a week off. Because it doesn't feel like something that you take a week off just because it doesn't feel like a job. It's something I do for fun and it is a pleasure to do. And I always feel that the fact that I found something that is a pleasure to do that hopefully does help people, I am so lucky. If everyone in the world can find something that they love doing that helps people, wow, that's a huge force. If you look at, someone did a study once on how many hours it took to produce all the content on Wikipedia. And then they took a look at how many TV hours Americans watched every day or something. And we could be doing so many Wikipedia style projects, Wikipedia scale projects every day if people can find something that is fun and useful at the same time. So that's where Jeff and Joel and all the rest have really done wonders. And it's the whole package. It's not that they've got a badge system. It's not that they've got a rep system. It's that the whole thing hangs together into something that is fun. And the competitive part is, yeah, it's fun. That's definitely a part of it. But it's not so that you can say, I'm the best. It's because it just makes it a little bit more enjoyable. And I think that's an amazing thing.
How close is number 2 from you?
I think at the moment, Mark Gravel is number 2. I think he's about 120,000 behind. And I think Darren Dimitrov is about 140,000 behind. But Darren's catching up with Mark. So who knows?
And for the few people who may be listening who may not be familiar with Stack Overflow, it's effectively the intersection of a blog, a wiki, and a forum. It's a community-based, massively multiplayer questions and answers site.
I sort of think of it as Usenet v2 in some ways, but very much focused on being Q&A. So it's not a social network, although there's a community around it. So people know names and things, but it's not somewhere that you have a social network where you reach out to people so much. There's chat bits, there's meta, all kinds of things that are around social, but it's deliberately not a social network.
Right.
But yeah, it's questions and answers.
And you are given points for every action.
You are given points. Well, this is where I get bitter, because you are given points by your peers mostly. So if you post a question or an answer, people can upvote it or downvote it to say, yes, this was helpful or a well-worded question or whatever, or downvote it to say, yeah, this question is really poorly worded, or your answer is just plain wrong, or you copied it from somewhere else without attribution, or any negative things. And you get points for being upvoted, you get a few points knocked off for being downvoted, and you get some points if your answer is accepted. And there's a cap on how much you can get every day just through people saying, yes, I like this answer. A cap of 200 points. And then after that, you only get any other points through either accepted answers or bounty questions, which are sort of, I think this question is really, really important to me, so I will sacrifice some of my reputation to give it to whoever does the best answer on this question. And there's this rep cap that steals my rep every day.
So what do you mean a rep cap that steals your rep? You mean that you can only put in so much effort, and then at that point, there's no reason for you to bother?
You can only get so much through voting. So the rep cap is 200 a day. So if I get 25 upvotes in a day, that will only get me 200 rep. The other 50 rep, so it's 10 points per upvote for answers. The other 50 rep is wasted, as it were. The rep cap eats it.
So you're saying because of your standing and your pervasiveness, you're all over the place. People are bumping into you all the time, upvoting stuff that you're doing. Mm-hmm. And that's all just rounding errors that are overflowing.
Most of the time,
away.
Yeah. So every so often someone will answer, and it's a daily thing. It goes for a UTC day. So you can get 200 through votes. You can get more for accepted answers. So amongst, I don't know how you even put it, amongst the top answerers, if there is any competition, it's for accepted answers because votes are cheap, as it were. So I can't remember the last time I didn't get the 20 votes in a day that takes you to the rep cap, but it was a long time ago. And usually mostly through having a long tail. And this is where, just showing up comes up again. I will get 5 votes a day for answers that are over a year old, over 2 years old. And so obviously that ends up being something that carries you through, that if I didn't show up for a whole week, I may or may not hit the rep cap every day. I wouldn't be surprised for a few days at least. I'm sure I would. And after that, without any even fairly recent answers, it would start to go. And this isn't, just to clarify, the rep is all we've talked about pretty much on Stack Overflow, but it's not the be all and end all. And I think people sometimes make the mistake of thinking that's all that people are interested in. And I would far rather give an answer that is going to be useful and not give me any points at all, but is useful to someone, than do something else, research something that is only useful to one person, but gets a big bounty or whatever. I'd rather just be useful to lots of people.
So that's really interesting. So as you're describing this point system and rep and the way that you've, I wouldn't say gamed in the negative way, but the way you are conscious and aware of the rules of the game.
Yep.
And this idea that if you don't show up, you're still going to get some residual stuff because of the goodness that you have kind of left out there in the world. Right. I'm translating this into my head into the game that I play, which is blogging.
Right. So you'll still get some hits for things
I get hits for things from ages ago. I've been blogged. April will be 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I have to do something for the 10 year.
I can't even think what I was doing 10 years ago.
Yeah. So it'll be 10, I think it's 10 years. Which seems like a long time, but at the same time, every once in a while I just wake up and freak out because we're in 2012, right? Where's my jetpack?
So how many posts is that?
Oh man. It's a couple thousand, 4,000 maybe?
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot. What is that? So 3,650 days. It's got to be upwards of 2,000, 2,500 maybe.
So to really freak yourself out sometime, you should get a script to grab just all the text from it and work out how many books that would fill.
Oh, don't even do that to me.
How many 1,000 pages?
Yeah, probably a lot. Probably a lot. I know for a while there, my posts per month was in the 30s, but it's lowered now.
Wow.
30 good solid posts a month. It's like 60 pages of text every month, but I lowered it. Now it's more like 15, 20.
Right.
I really am focused on quality right now. I look back at some of my older stuff, and I'm sure you do the same thing. I was like, oh, what drivel.
Yeah.
No one should ever visit this blog. This is garbage. I want to go back and what was I writing this throwaway post? It's like 4 paragraphs and some evocative clip art. It's just awful. But it's the top Google result for some obscure.
Sure.
Someone decides to search for a GUID.
Yeah.
And then they find my blog. Like, yeah, awesome.
Yeah. But if you can pump out 15 posts a month, and that's focusing on quality, that's amazing. So the only time that I've ever blogged that much was, just over a year ago. I was doing a series called EduLink, where I, rewrote link to objects from scratch.
Wow.
Just for the sake of it. Really just to, well.
This is a part where I feel like a phony now. I mean, did you seriously just hear what you just said?
No, well, okay. I say just for the sake of it, to prove a point that you don't have to be smart to write link to objects. That actually it's the design. You have to be really smart to design link. Very, very smart. But the actual implementation, how many lines do you think it would take to implement where or select? It's about 3 lines.
I see.
It's really smart because we're standing on the shoulders of giants and kind of doing little fingers behind their heads. Because the compiler's doing a load of stuff for you, the language is designed right for you, and it's really easy. So I did all of the standard linked to objects operators and found in everything that I did, there was something interesting that I hadn't even thought of before. I'd sort of taken it on thinking, okay, the first few posts will be interesting and I will eke out the general patterns, and then the rest will be, yep, this needs to do X and here's the code and we're done.
You know, that really speaks to the value of, I guess the kids call it code katas, but it's a code kata, K-A-T-A. The idea is that you go through this motion that intellectually seems simple, but when you do it, you realize that there's a lot to it. And
yes.
Just like in any kind of a martial art, simple movements, or in Karate Kid, turn into being complex. You know, he thinks he's going wax on, wax off, and he discovers that he's been just, how to block things. The same thing applies in re-implementing common patterns. One of the most fun things that I ever did in college was an operating systems class. And I thought I was going to go and dig into like Minix or Linux or whatever. And the guy shows up with a 8.5 by 11 sheet paper, or an A4 for the English people amongst us. And he says, here's this assembly language that I invented. Here's an example program, and here's the expected output. I want you to go and create a 32-bit machine with this much memory. And he just started describing this theoretical machine. And I'm going to give you this text file.
Yep.
And I want you to execute it. Go write an operating system. Now, he didn't literally mean like at the BIOS level.
Sure.
So he wanted you to implement a virtualized operating system. And that was it. That one sheet of paper was 12 weeks of class.
Yeah.
And I did it in C#.
Oh, cool.
And it was awesome. I'm still on my blog. And I did, once I figured it out, and I did a virtual memory swapper. And just to be silly, I actually swapped out each byte as an XML file, like a single byte. So it was like open bracket, byte, close bracket, and then the byte. Just to imagine, just why
so
not?
That was
right?
the storage format. Or
yeah,
whatever.
That was the storage format for
Awesome.
virtual memory swapping. It was totally ridiculous, just to see if you could, right?
Yeah.
But man, I learned more about like paging and fragment. I had to make like a visualizer when my heap got fragmented and keeping track of mapping pointers and stuff. If I had, but I knew all that stuff intellectually. But if I hadn't have turned the crank and actually done it.
Absolutely. And I think that's what a lot of people have found about writing as well. So I've written a book about C#. I remember when Joe Duffy was writing concurrent programming on Windows, he blogged and said exactly the same thing that I'd been saying and had heard other people saying. It's amazing how much you find you don't know when you try to explain something to someone else. So I'm sure you know Joe. He knows so much about concurrency on Windows. Just mind-blowingly so.
Stephen Tobe's the same way.
Yeah. And yet, when they try to write it down and pinpoint stuff, you find the gaps. You find stuff that you didn't know you didn't know. And so linked to objects was the same. So I took things, and virtually every operator, there was some question on, is it valid to optimize a certain thing or not? And you could argue it both ways, and maybe I'd find that linked to objects did optimize something, and I would have unit tests to prove that it was optimized in a particular way, which, given that optimization is meant to not have side effects, as it were, it's quite tricky to prove an optimization and prove that some things weren't optimized and try to work out why. Found a bug in linked to objects at the same time. So it's incredible fun. Much more so than I expected. And during that time, over the Christmas holidays, I was pumping out a couple of posts a day that were very formulaic in terms of, here's the operator, here's the signature that we're going to do, here's what it needs to achieve, because I wanted it to end up being a sort of reference work as well. Here are the tests we're going to write, and here's the implementation, or the interesting bits of the implementation. And I was able to do a couple of those a day, but it kind of burnt me out as well. It was loads of fun, but I can't imagine being able to write one post every other day for a sustained period and keep the quality up.
Some days you just kind of wake up. There's this old American cartoon. Do you know about Dunkin' Donuts? I've heard
no.
Dunkin'. Okay, so this is our great American, like what we brought to the to the culture is Dunkin' Donuts, right?
Oh, sorry, Dunkin' Donuts. Yes,
Dunkin' Donuts.
Yes, I thought you said duck and donuts.
Sorry, Dunkin'.
That's a whole different.
No, there's no ducks in this one. So there's this commercial, rather not a cartoon, but a commercial where in the 80s where there's this man. He looks like Mario. He's got the big mustache, and he gets out. The commercial starts, and it's 4 a.m, and the alarm goes off, and he opens his eyes and he goes, "Time to make the donuts." And the idea is that, he's up at 4 a.m. making the donuts so that you get up at 6 a.m. and the donuts are ready. Sure. And that's this whole thing. He's just this pathetic, sad sack, but he's obligated to make the donuts. But you start to think of him as this kind of hero.
Yep.
Because, hey man, he's making the donuts every day for us, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes you have this sense of like, time to blog the .net or whatever, you're the, and then that's not fun.
Yeah.
But then, I'll read other people's blog posts. And I'll see the fun. I'll read the fun that they're having, and I'll start to get kind of outside my comfort zone.
Right.
And actually, Rob Connery has been one of those guys where he's kind of brought some of the fun into blogging. Mm-hmm. He's a little more sassy and a little bit more throw a dart at the elephant than I typically am. But some of my best posts of the last 6 months have been directly as a result of being just a little bit more declarative and expressing a stronger opinion about stuff, and poking the lion that I wouldn't necessarily do. And that makes me feel less like it's a slog.
Right. Yeah.
Because nobody wants to just crank out the same kind of nonsense.
No.
Yeah. It's got to be fresh.
Yeah. And it's got to be, I think you really have to enjoy it yourself, because otherwise people are going to see that you're not.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's one thing when people say, that they've enjoyed a session that I've given at a conference or whatever. And in fact, I'm also a Methodist local preacher back in the UK.
Really?
And I'm longing for someone who's been to a tech conference to come to a church that I'm preaching at one day, or vice versa, and sort of comment on the similarities or differences. Because I think I, in some ways, preach in the same way that I give tech talks, particularly around, I'm enthusiastic. If I can't find something that I'm absolutely passionate about, then it's really difficult. And in fact, I found that difficult just before Christmas. So I was preaching on the last Sunday before Christmas, and my sermon was on Advent for the tired Christian, because I was exhausted at the time. And I felt it was the one thing I could actually speak about honestly and with some passion was, I'm exhausted at the moment. But yeah, I think being passionate about anything is infectious, and it's harder to do that on a blog. I think it takes a special gift to do it on a blog. I find it easier to do in person.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're here at CodeMash, at the CodeMash conference. You can check it out at codemash.org. We're in Ohio, and I was walking in the hallways actually just a few minutes before I met you, and this young man came up and said, he says, I'm an adjunct professor, spare time kind of professor on the side at the local college. Do you have any tips? He's asking me this. Do you have any tips on speaking to young people or college students? And I said, encourage them to be enthusiastic or to leave.
Right.
Because if they're going to come in and sleep, or they just need the credit, kick them out.
Right.
Because in high school, at least in America, the high school teacher is graded on how well the teachers do, on how well the children do.
Yeah.
In high school, the teachers are graded on how well the children do. So a child fails, it is perceived as a failure on the part of the teacher.
Yep.
In college, man, they'll fail you just for fun. I get paid no matter whether you all get Fs or whether you all get A's. So if you don't want to be passionate, if you don't want to be excited, if you're not excited about software, excited about computers, if you're not at home taking apart your clock radio and disassembling the toaster and making it Wi-Fi enabled,
then find something that will do.
Then just get out of here, because why not be excited?
I have to confess, so I read maths at university, but there were some topics that were less interesting than others, and I think I missed most of my geometry of surfaces lectures in order to go to the classics faculty and study. I was in my third year, and I went to the first year philosophy lectures because they were just more fun. I think I was probably the only one there who was having a load of fun, because it was something I didn't need to do. I was just there for fun. And it busts me to see all these people going, oh, it's philosophy. It's philosophy. It's great. And I was able to bring some maths to that and ask sort of bizarre questions that would only come from a mathmo talking about philosophy. But it was great. And I don't regret skipping those geometry of surfaces lectures at all. I'm sure they were great for what they were, but it wasn't my cup of tea.
And that's the thing that I want to figure out how to give that to my kids, because I keep coming in contact with young people that are just dispassionate.
Right. Or passive.
Passive. Just life is happening to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, my message in everything is get out there and here are the tools and do something. You are powerful.
Right.
That's my message. Whether I'm teaching college students, high school students, volunteering, or whether I'm talking to adults at CodeMash, you are powerful.
Yeah.
You know, your crown has been paid for. Put it on. And when people aren't excited about that, I wonder, were you born passive and dispassionate? What can you go find something that you can be excited about? So excited that you're afraid you might be a phony.
Right. Yeah. Because there is something that when you're passionate, you can feel, you can usually see that there is more, there's always more. You can see there's something else coming up, which means, hey, I have to suck at this. If I'm so far behind the curve, even if that's actually the bleeding edge of the curve.
Exactly.
But because of the passion takes you to excel and feel that you're not excelling at the same time. And I think one can drive the other, so long as it stays healthy.
Yeah. Someone was teasing me about I skipped some parties last night and I came back and I worked on my talk. And they're like, what are you doing? I said, you're Scott Hanselman. And like, you have I'm in a complete panic. Yeah. You know, this talk is going to suck if I don't go and practice. And I was up till 3 a.m. today.
Oh, man.
In this time zone, I was up till 3 a.m. practicing because I didn't want it to suck.
Right.
And I've given talks for 20 years, but each one of them, everyone knows my process. Abject panic and terror is a great way to become really creative.
Well, so after my talk with Bill this morning, we had a chap come up to me and say, it would really help me if you would tell me that you had to put work into that. Because otherwise he would feel a failure
yeah, he would be a phony because John just shows up.
Well, he had this idea that probably it was true that people put in a lot of effort, but if it wasn't, then he might as well go home because he had to work really hard to do anything. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And if you are, and I gave you as an example that, you are a consummate speaker, and I knew that the talk would have gone brilliantly and that it wouldn't have looked like there was effort involved at all because that's how good you are at doing it. But that is because you've put in all the effort beforehand. I mean, Bill and I practiced, I'm sure, a lot less than you did.
I heard you've been doing this thing for weeks and weeks, though. I talked to Diane, and she said you guys have been practicing remotely.
We've had some slides and a bit of code and stuff, but we didn't rehearse anything. We didn't rehearse the switchovers and who was going to do. We had an idea of who would do which bit. It would be interesting to look at the notes afterwards and see how accurately that turned out. But no, it wasn't. We didn't go somewhere and record an example and then pick it apart and all the things. There's a brilliant book. Confessions of a Public Speaker.
Was that Scott Birkin?
Yes.
Oh, Scott Birkin. Everything he writes is great. Buy everything that Scott Birkin writes.
And it's lovely. And I promised myself after reading this book, I will start rehearsing when I do talks. I will start rehearsing to a camera. I will watch it. And to this day, I still haven't. And I feel completely ashamed of that.
It's a really amazing thing if you do. And I honestly, 3 a.m, 3:30 when I went to sleep, I closed my eyes and I started kind of thinking to myself in a focused, like as if I were talking to myself. I don't talk to myself, but I was thinking to myself, hi, I'm Scott Hanselman. I work for Microsoft. I was literally, as I was going to sleep, I was saying it. I could feel the sub-vocalization. I could feel my tongue moving in my mouth as I was.
Sure. And I can rehearse like that, but I've never rehearsed and done a webcam.
Oh, you should.
Yeah, I know I should. But
you're going to realize what you do with your hands and what you do.
And this is to do with being phony because I hate watching myself and I hate listening to myself. And I know that it would make me better. And I can't quite face it yet. So the fact that you've said it as well as the other Scott, maybe it's a Scott thing. But I should definitely do it.
It will take you to the next level. And honestly, let someone else rip you apart.
Right.
Let them watch you rip you apart. But the great part is that have you ever done theater?
Yes. It's
just theater, right? I mean, it's blocking. Make sure you're facing the audience. Sure. Enunciate. Throw your voice against the back of the room. All that stuff. This is all classic kind of theater training type stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Same things apply. Don't mean. And I make the mistakes. Like I just did this video, this speaker how to speak video with Rob Connery, And in the video, I explain, don't touch your face, keep your hands out of your pocket. A couple people emailed me after they watched the video and they're like, but you touched your face like within 5 minutes of your, see, I mean, I'm always going to have to work on that.
And I'm aware of certain phrases that I'll use just over and over again. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm aware of it, but I'm sure there are other phrases that I'm not aware I'm reusing the whole time. But yeah, it's, one day I just need to work out a time that I can afford that amount of self-loathing and get back on the horse.
I love that we have equal amounts of self-loathing because it drives us forward. Thank you so much, Jon Skeet, for talking to me.
Thank you. It's been fun.
This has been a very special episode of Handsome Minutes, I think, and we'll see you again next week.